Why do you think, though, that women are just now getting diagnosed late in life? Like all the girlfriends are like, girl, I got this ADHD. It's changed my mindset. Even maybe some of them haven't even gotten on medicine, but just knowing it has created this like space for them. Yeah. So why do you think it's happening so late?
Let's grow as we go.
Horizons. So topic today is being neurospicy
as a woman.
Yes, as a woman.
Yeah.
Are you? Do you feel like you're neurospicy, or maybe you've already been diagnosed? And
or you're in denial.
Can someone please, let's get a definition of neurospicy? Because I think there's right. Because I think ADHD, OCD. I mean, really,
all the
trauma
things.
Informed. I don't think you can define it. I think it is a feeling.
Oh my goodness.
When someone speaks and you go, well, because I think there's this trend, right, where even on TikTok, people are like, hey, firstborn perfectionist daughter that was in the GT program but now has some tummy issues and a hyper focus of knitting. How's it going out there? Right? You know what I mean? And they just like click everything in your box. Yeah. You're like, oh, I feel seen. So then you just know.
Yeah.
You just know.
I mean, I guess I don't feel like I am neurospicy.
That is a feeling you are allowed to have.
Right.
It's
Listen,
wrong.
and when
she's neurospicy.
And I'm not saying it's bad, or listen. I sit here with neurospicy friends. It's fine. But I stated this off camera just a second ago, and my niece, who's our producer, was like, "What?" And I was like, "What? What do you mean?" I do have something. Like, I was looking at TikTok and it was like, "Do you not like heavy breathing, chewing? People, you can hear people chewing their food." And you don't like if someone sits too close to you, and if you're really into something, you get like you're 0 to 100 when you're interrupted. Like you're into something and you're in the groove.
You can not hear like, anything else around you,
or you can just completely and
get very agitated.
Do your thing. You might be a little neurospicy, and I was like, I mean,
you felt it. You felt a little seen.
I do those things, but.
Were you in the GT program?
Mind your business.
Were you first chair clarinetist? Do you play multiple instruments?
I worked hard. I was a hard worker.
That's also called hyperfocus. Just say what it is.
First daughter GT
I will
trauma.
say, check. So possibly, maybe I do have neurospicy people all up in my house.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So
do you have children with multiple?
Right. That's a good clue.
Yes,
that one or both of you in the parenting party are neurospicy.
But my husband has ADHD, so I was like, oh, okay, and one of our kiddos is twice exceptional. Twice exceptional means that they click 2 of the boxes or more on the neurospicy realm. Because I think a lot of them kind of blur together, in my opinion.
Yeah. There's an overlay.
Yeah,
absolutely all of them.
Yes, I wish if I can find it. I'm super close with the gifted and talented teachers at my kids' school. My daughter is in the gifted and talented program, and so I went to a meeting about gifted and talented kiddos.
I think you shared that.
Yeah,
the circle.
Did I? It was so good. I've got to find it.
Kind of like a Venn diagram of like how, but it was multiple.
But it was
OCD,
like a
depression, giftedness.
All of them, and they kind of all blurred together. Truly, truly, like OCD touched all these other ones. ADHD touched being gifted. It can look certain ways. Like things can look like a trauma brain can look like it's ADHD. Or that they're oppositional defiant, or like they're kind of all mixed together.
It's just a beautiful little mosaic.
It is.
Well, but here's what I think. I've been kind of reading and researching on specifically autism spectrum disorder, as well as other general labels for a good long while. But what I what my takeaway is that the idea of normalcy is just a construct. It's a theory of what it might look like if there was no spectrum.
Yeah,
It's like creating an arbitrary ground zero. I think that everyone is on a spectrum because we're all complex individuals. Our neurology is constantly in flux, developing. It's influenced by what we've experienced. And so I think that we're all neurospicy. Everyone has something that they're working through, whether it be an issue with attention, an issue of controlling your emotions, or being able to control your impulses, figuring out how to engage socially with people.
Yeah.
Right?
That's good, though. Yeah.
Everyone has something that they deal with. And if we look at it for just in terms of symptoms, everyone has some kind of neurospicy. That's my take on it. If you talk to a clinician, they would say that there is a bell curve and that there is a zero, a completely normal. What I will say is that the spectrum is vast. It can be very complex. And once you get to the farthest end of the bell curve, away from this arbitrary normal, there are many more differences among what we call neurospicy people, right? And so those differences can make it a little bit more challenging to kind of move throughout life and interact with people. But anyway, I think that we're all on a spectrum.
Yeah.
And I think that first acknowledging that as a potential truth will enable us to be more accepting of different people.
That's good.
And to be able to craft a world that is not just set for an arbitrary normal.
Yeah. Because I know I've spoken to an adult life diagnosis, and I had said that, like, well, I think we're all on a spectrum to some degree. And they had expressed to me that felt dismissive to their new experience. But I can see that this idea that but if we all can agree that there is a spectrum, a bell curve, however you want to, that it makes everyone else more expectant, like open to this idea, even if you don't think you're on that bell curve or not. But I think that just to bring another perspective to that statement, because I know that I've heard that from other people, but most, that have been diagnosed, because some people can use it as a dismissive phrase.
That's true.
But what you're saying is so true. Like, it allows us all to be open
It's
to
this
just
idea
whatever.
of inclusivity. Like, listen, we all have our things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't dismiss that some areas of a spectrum are more challenging to traverse.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure. Yeah.
There's some that, are just make it easier for us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's just your symptoms are maybe more severe or more marked, shall we say. What do you think, Christina?
No, for sure. I think that historically there's just been no research in that area. And I have a younger cousin who was like at the forefront of ADD as a kid in the early, like mid 80s, 90s, and it was severe, right? Like, we're having severe expressions of those things. And so I kind of have this interesting, like, I remember them trying medications and like the Ritalin being terrible for him, and just the trauma of like going through that as a young child myself, and then like watching my family struggle to like help them find their path. So I think that, and then I think because there has been now where, 40 plus years into trying to understand these brain changes, because I have heard them described too as like an evolutional leap. Like that our brains, there's that are like the brain is evolving, and we're seeing an evolutionary leap in our brain development. So people are like, oh, what's happening? So it's because it's new and it's different, or it's just never been able, like the freedom to express because of lifestyle or whatever, that it's suddenly getting interest. And now I think we're far enough in it that people in our generation who grew up maybe with it or with siblings that are coming from a diverse medical field are bringing more knowledge to the table, right? There are more women who grew up and then went into psychology or whatever, the medical field. And then as they studied it, probably was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's me. And so then there have been researchers, women researchers who've said, or men with daughters or whatever, you know what I mean? I think we're just getting a more diverse, it's been around.
Yeah.
It's been around forever,
Yeah.
but it's been at the front of societal's mind and conversation that we've worked several decades in, that now we're starting to get good research.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we have people like us, and I think you said earlier, like children are being more easily diagnosed and seen and accommodated. And then there has to be like, that's the first thing. Like when we took my daughter in, they're like, well, you need to know that if she comes back as falling somewhere in the spectrum, it's genetic, like her brain, she got it from somewhere. So it's going to be like you or your husband or both. And we were like, oh, I don't know. You know what I mean? And because we wouldn't have put ourselves in any of those realms prior to having her face her struggles and help her through them, and then having to go, oh, okay, well, is it you? Is it me? Like, well, he does do that. I don't know. Is it, and starting to see that come through. Yeah.
I thought it was crazy though, because it blew up during COVID. Like, I think everyone just had to, like you say, sit down.
Home,
Well, sit down and the stress of it.
Yeah.
So a lot of things, like they'll say, like a lot of women will get into their 20s and all of a sudden they'll be like, I have unmanaged adult ADD, but I've gone my whole life and I've done fine. But it's just like the elevated stress of adulting.
Yes.
Like you've learned to manage here, like to mask and to manage. And then when it moves outside of your management capabilities, is when things will start to demonstrate and come to the surface. All of those things.
Too fractured.
It's just, where you've, like up to that point, you've gotten up, you've gone to school, you've come home, you might have a friend, you might have, you know what I mean? Like you're very, very curated existence of like what can fit and what won't fit. And then once you get to college and then out, you have less control over what comes in and out of your day.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I guess the question is, how would you know? What would be some hints that it's more than just next level stress, right? Yeah. One thing for me growing up, and I experienced it growing up, and then I know it looking back, was this feeling that everyone was playing from a playbook or had some information, like this joint knowledge that I didn't know. Like everyone seemed to know how to act, how to respond, how to move about. And it felt like I had missed something.
Or that everyone had enough battery life to get through the day that I just, like, you feel like you are less because I just felt incapable to do what everybody else seemed to be doing. Yeah. Like I would just be exhausted all the time.
So what's your hyper focus? I'm dying to know.
Well, since I've had kids, it's been giftedness, it's been neurology, neuropsychology, educational psychology. I've been following that for a long time and studying that. But like in high school, the only person I knew that was heavily into fantasy novels. And so I didn't have anywhere to express that, so I just read them in my room, I didn't like it to go in any, what are they called, like Comic-Cons or those things. I didn't like wear the costumes, but I read them a lot.
Would you have worn the costumes if you felt like?
I mean, maybe if it had been like an accepted practice.
Right. If you felt like you would, there's no judgment there.
Right, yeah, but like I didn't know anyone.
Or like D&D. Do you think you would have done like D&D?
I remember like in elementary school, like Boys on the Bus, like playing that. And I was like, ooh, what's that? But I knew that like there was no way I could engage in that. It wouldn't be allowed. But yeah. So,
That's funny.
Again, I don't really know if I am.
She is.
But I feel like I remember when I was teaching, and I didn't have those things that you're talking about, but I just felt like once I started I had my daughter, I was married, I was trying to, for all those choir directors out there, woo woo, it's a different beast than being a classroom teacher. Being a classroom teacher is difficult in its own ways. Being a band choir type of director, it's time intensive, right? So there's a lot of time you're not at home, and I felt like I just could not manage time.
Yeah.
Like there was just never enough time in my day. So I don't know if that is, and I saw other people doing it really well. I was like, how are you doing that?
I still feel like that.
I don't feel like that now, but I just felt like when I was working, I don't know if it was a spectrum thing or if it was just like, maybe we're asking people to do a little too much, but that is something you should look into. Like, is it, I need to take stuff off my plate or I'm in the wrong job? That's what I came to. I was in the wrong job. So I quit, but it could be, you know, something else, but
Yeah. Well, and my therapist said that if you feel like it's impeding your life, if you feel like you cannot, your relationship is suffering, work is suffering, health is suffering, if there are things that are moving towards being unfunctional, that is when, as an adult, you know, if you're coming to these conversations later, in her opinion, that was when she said like, oh, well, maybe we'll look at medicine if you feel like you can't cope.
right.
Which is a little bit of a loaded sentence because I've been coping my whole life. So what does it look like? Like my husband and I've had this conversation. Well, maybe it's one of those things that can't even be a good gauge of what's functional and what isn't. If it's always been unfunctional, like
how do you know when it is functioning?
how do you know? I couldn't like verbalize my own level of discomfort and pain because I was like, I don't know. So maybe my dysfunction is always at a 10, but it's just all I've ever known. So I can't tell you that like, oh, this has gotten really bad lately,
Yes.
you know?
Lila Marie, you've gotten into, you've been coaching some people on executive functioning.
Yes.
So what is that and what does that look like?
So executive functioning is this idea that your brain has like a grand maestro that organizes all the different areas of your brain. So you have language, you have emotion, you have cognitive learning, and so many more. But the executive functioning is how to organize your thoughts and your life in a way that helps you function and move forward. So an example of executive functioning in everyday life may be the ability to take a to-do list and to break those down into subtasks and then perhaps figure out where to assign a task, like what day, based on what else you have going on. It could be as simple as if you're a student, keeping your backpack organized. What are some ways and tips that you can use? For instance, color coding per subject so that you know if you have your binder, your pencil, etc. for each subject, right? So it's organizing your thoughts and your tasks and your living space in a way that is functional. So it's figuring out how to move through life in a way that's beneficial to you. Yeah.
Okay. It's kind of like having a personal trainer.
Yeah.
It's kind of like having a personal trainer, but for the functioning of your life.
Yes, it is.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That was news. That was new to me. Executive functioning. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Yeah. I think it's just one of those things that's coming to the front, like as we know more and we talk more and people share their experiences, right? You start to find common threads. And that lack of executive function can be a very strong indicator.
It's something interesting that I have learned through friends and family that ultimately were like, I have ADHD. And then they were, the psychiatrist or whoever said yes, and they kind of have a plan for them, was that they were masking, but the masking was like anxiety.
Yes.
Depression. All of these things. And I was like, how can that be? Like, that doesn't even make sense to me. But then when you see someone you love do the work and kind of work on the ADHD piece through, therapy and medicine or however, the anxiety was the worry that I'm not doing the things I know I need to do.
Yeah,
The worry that I can't even get myself to get up to do the things. The depression because I'm my worst critic. I'm hard on myself. I'm telling myself you're not good enough. Obviously, you can't even do these simple tasks. And so, look at that too. But I've learned through friends and family that anxiety and depression is a cause of something. So if you can get to the cause,
Right.
then you'll be so surprised by you're going to be able to go, oh my gosh, that used to worry me, but now because you've dealt with the cause, the trauma, or whatever that issue is, that is not a thing. It's
Yeah.
not a thing anymore.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that, Christina? What's your thought?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we are not medical professionals. Please do not take any of our
None of it.
advice. But I do agree that I think that there is causality, right? Between, so it's just, you had said something a few episodes back that there's a root, like there's a brain. It's an expression of something that your brain is struggling to try to work through or work out. So if you can do the work, and there's so many people and research even now that's been done about like food as medicine and obviously therapy and that sort of thing, finding balance, it does play in, and I think you are able to move yourself into a different way of coping and dealing, whatever that looks like for you. But yeah, I agree. I think it is definitely something. If you put in the work, you can see some time, you can see some change. And I see a lot of things again. And we had to have a conversation, like these evaluations were set up for males. They're also set up for very young males. So if you have older girls that you're like, oh, I wonder if that's what we're seeing here. Know that process can be very frustrating because like I had my pediatrician said, we don't generally test past 8.
Wow.
And then there's more and more research that most girls don't start to have, symptomatic, I don't want to say symptoms, but like start to see the effects of those, certain brain pathways until they're like puberty. Again, you have a hormonal shift. You have something that now your brain's trying to take on another thing, and it might feel like my hands are already full. What do you want me to do with this?
So going back to our issue on our episode on therapy, keep on looking for the person who is going to be tuned in to you in terms of gender, in terms of culture, who has a wide berth of experience with different cultures. I think that's really important. A book by Johann Hari. It's called Lost Connections. That book talking about how our brain, sometimes depression or other neurodiversities, can stem from unreasonable events, that happen in our life, how our body responds. But these traumas, look at that as well as you look at yourself in terms of neurodiversity, because trauma can literally change your brain. It changes your brain function. It changes your neurology, your hormones. It can change the shape of your brain. So as you're considering neurodiversity, consider that it can be genetic. It can be also your body's reasonable response to an unreasonable situation, event that you have experienced. We're beginning to explore it, right? And as human beings, there's a tendency to make something that's different right or wrong, elevated or devalued. And so let's just hold space that this is something that may be for you. And so now take the ownership and the agency and autonomy to decide. So now what? How am I going to proceed from here on with this knowledge, accepting and loving myself?
And ultimately, you're enough.
You are. Absolutely.
Just as you are. You are enough.
Well, and also, just to throw really quick, like they're teaching our children, like we tell our children every day, like if you have neurospicy babies, that's like, that's your superpower.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like your brain has a superpower to fill in the blank, see things others can't, solve problems. that other people can't. Like your brain moves faster so it can get to the solutions quicker, whatever it is, like, which is all are true statements, but we also just have to kind of put those on ourselves and give ourselves the grace of just being like, this is me. You know what I mean? And it's okay.
If you're already past that step and you're like, girl, I have found my superpower, I've done my layering, and I've figured this out, please share in the comments,
that'd be great.
Connect, help. That's what this is about. This is why we're sitting here. We want to get you connected with people that have gone through this struggle or gone through this amazing journey,
Yeah.
and they can help you on the way. So thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with us today, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.